Thanks to you at home as well for staying with us for the next hour. In the great state of Alaska, there is a large island southwest of Anchorage off the coast of Homer, Alaska. It's called Kodiak Island. And on Kodiak, there is a Coast Guard station on the eastern side of the island. Yesterday, a retired Coast Guard Chief Petty Officer and a currently serving Coast Guard Petty Officer First Class were found dead at a Coast Guard communication station on Kodiak, where they both worked monitoring radio traffic. The FBI is responding. They are treating this as a double homicide of these Coast Guard members. Nobody is in custody. Both of these men were shot to death. Last night in Brooklyn, Ohio, near Cleveland, 911 dispatchers took a call from a woman at a Cracker Barrel restaurant saying that she had informed her husband that she was leaving him and he, quote, was not taking it well. Please, could somebody respond to the Cracker Barrel to help? By the time police arrived, the woman had been shot dead, as had one of her 10-year-old daughters, whose birthday it was that day. The girl's sister, a second daughter, was shot as well, critically injured, and a man with a gun was leaving the restaurant. The man did not surrender his weapon, and police killed him. Also yesterday in California, in Modesto, California, Stanislaus County Sheriff's deputies tried to serve an eviction notice. They were met with gunfire. One of the deputies was killed, as was a civilian on the scene. Last night in Greenland, New Hampshire, 5 police officers were shot, including the local police chief who was killed, just 8 days short of his planned retirement. After shooting the 5 officers, a 29-year-old local man then shot and killed his ex-girlfriend and shot and killed himself. Early this morning in Chicopee, Massachusetts, out in the western part of the state, a state trooper was shot and wounded, and the suspect in the case was killed. According to an account in the Springfield Republican newspaper, neighbor Joseph Kaczynski says he saw a man flee the building with car keys in his hand, saying, "Get away from me." Seconds later, he saw a gun barrel from a window and a shot whizzed out above his head. Quote, "Then there were bullets everywhere. It was like Iraq." Kaczynski saw a state trooper approach the West Street house and get shot. Quote, "I saw him take a bullet." Then today, an Orange County, California judge ordered portions of the grand jury testimony released in the case of a 42-year-old man who had strapped on 3 guns, extra ammunition, and a bulletproof vest, and then went into a Seal Beach, California hair salon, where he shot and killed his ex-wife and 7 other people. The salon owner was carrying only a pair of scissors. As he saw the gunman coming and approached the door of the salon, he was the first to be shot dead, then the gunman's ex-wife, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 more people, all shot dead in the hair salon. Then the gunman turned around and left and randomly decided to shoot and kill a man just sitting in his car in the parking lot as well. 8 people dead in what law enforcement officials say was approximately 2 minutes elapsed. In court today in Tulsa, hate crimes and murder charges were filed against these 2 men who went driving around Tulsa, Oklahoma last week, allegedly choosing African-American men at random to shoot and kill. They shot and killed 3 men and wounded 2 others. Yesterday in the city of St. Louis, prosecutors charged a 21-year-old man for leaving behind a, quote, trail of mayhem across St. Louis Wednesday afternoon. After some sort of argument, the man allegedly shot 2 young men on the street at point-blank range. He shot one man in the arm and another directly in the chest before pulling a gun on a St. Louis police officer. 2 days before that, also in St. Louis, a 24-year-old man was shot to death while sitting in his car. Witnesses say they saw an armed gunman just walk up to the car, fire several shots inside, and then take off. When police arrived on the scene, they found more than 20 bullet casings scattered on the street near the vehicle. St. Louis is a city, frankly, that has been racked by gun violence recently. Even if we just stay there, there's more. Early Sunday morning, a 49-year-old woman was walking along the street on the north side of St. Louis. Police say a man approached the woman, fired several shots at her, and then fled the scene, leaving her in serious condition. A few days before that, 3 St. Louis teenagers were shot as they were walking through the parking lot of a local Church's Chicken restaurant. 50 St. Louis police officers responded to those shootings, but there's still no suspect. A few days before that, St. Louis homicide detectives were called to the scene of a shooting in North St. Louis. A 25-year-old man named Mario Moore was shot in the back. He later died from his injuries at a local hospital. 2 days before that, in the same neighborhood, local residents called the police when they heard roughly 6 gunshots ring out at around 7 o'clock that night. Neighbors say they saw a man pull into a driveway, get out of his car, whereupon he was shot in the chest, suffering wounds that proved to be fatal. Gun violence has gotten so bad in the city of St. Louis, Missouri, that a number of local groups got together last week to call for a gun violence summit to be held in the city between local law enforcement officials and community groups. And it was there, in the city of St. Louis today, where the National Rifle Association officially kicked off its annual convention, the nation's leading gun lobby. The main featured speaker at today's NRA convention was presumptive Republican presidential nominee Mitt Romney. Mr. Romney, frankly, has been all over the map on gun issues during his career in politics, but the latest version of Mitt Romney proclaims himself to be a lifelong member of the NRA. Mr. Romney essentially just gave his stump speech at the NRA convention today, but he did add in a few lines about guns. And frankly, what he added in about guns was a really hard-to-understand few lines.
We need a president who will enforce current laws, not create new ones that only serve to burden lawful gun owners. President Obama has not. I will.
Okay, in order to understand just what Mitt Romney was trying to say today about guns, it's a very important issue in our polity, right? In order to understand what he's saying here, you actually sort of have to diagram his sentences. I mean, take that line we just played.
We need a president who will enforce current laws.
We need a president who will enforce current laws. Okay, so far so good. But then the next thing he says?
Not create new ones that only serve to burden lawful gun owners. President Obama has not. I will.
President Obama has not what? President Obama has not enforced current laws? Or are you talking about the second part of what you said? President Obama has not created new laws. I mean, technically, Mr. Romney is saying that President Obama has not created new laws. It is kind of hard to understand the dangling negative. I think what Mitt Romney is trying to give the impression of is that President Obama has created new restrictive gun laws. He has created new laws. But which ones exactly?
We need a president who will stand up for the rights of hunters and sportsmen and those who seek to protect their homes and their families. President Obama has not.
How has President Obama not done that exactly? What has he done to not stand for the rights of those people? What are you accusing him of?
If we're going to safeguard our Second Amendment, it's time to elect a president who will defend the rights President Obama ignores or minimizes.
What has President Obama been ignoring or minimizing, and how? Really? I mean, what is the accusation here? Do you want him to be overtly doing something that he is not doing? You are damning President Obama for doing what about guns exactly?
We've all seen enough of President Obama over the last 3 years to know that we don't want another 4.
What is it about him that you are unhappy with on guns in particular? What is the basis of the complaint here? We reached out to the Romney campaign today to ask which specific new gun laws President Obama has passed that Governor Romney was describing today. They have so far not given us any answer. Hope springs eternal, though. It should be noted, after those were his lines on guns in the speech, and after that little mystifying map of vagueness today about guns, finally, Mitt Romney got to the punchline part of his speech. Listen.
In a second term, he'd be unrestrained by the demands of re-election.
Ah, I see. That's what this is all about. President Obama hasn't done anything now, but he has a secret plan to take away everybody's guns in the next term. A secret plan that he's not pursuing now. But he will pursue that secret plan if he wins a second term. That is what gun politics are like right now. It's this phantom stuff about how President Obama has a secret plan to take away your guns. And you can tell he has a secret plan to take away your guns because he hasn't yet taken away your guns, don't you see? But still, you need to stop him from doing this thing that he has not done. That's what our gun politics are all about right now, rather than anything to do with what is actually going on in the country about guns. And there is something actually going on in the country about guns. We do actually have a real gun violence problem in this country. Literally, in the streets of St. Louis, just outside of where the NRA was meeting today, there is a crisis, if you ask St. Louis. And it was the same thing last year. Last year, the NRA convention was held where? In the city of Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh, a city with neighborhoods like Homewood that are absolutely torn apart by gun violence. And while the lobby that determines our gun laws in this country plays fantasy politics about policies that don't exist and secret plans, the consequences of that being what determines our gun policies plays out right on the streets around them in flesh and blood. Joining us now is Councilman Ricky Burgess, Pittsburgh City Councilman from the 9th District. We visited with Councilman Burgess last May when the NRA held its annual convention in Pittsburgh. Councilman Burgess, it is really nice to have you back on the show. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much, Rachel. It was good to be here.
While the conversation at the NRA convention revolves this year around this idea that President Obama has some secret plan to take away people's guns, what conversation would you like to see the country have about gun policy, given the concerns of where you live and the folks that you represent?
Well, I'd ask the Republican governor, why are you calling a certain segment of the population to arms? What he's really doing secretly, not even secretly, is he's asking people to buy more guns, to buy more ammunitions that we know will cause death in the streets, blood in our community. The NRA really should be called a death convention. It should be attended by morticians and funeral directors, because what they want is the wholesale guns without any legitimate restrictions, knowing full well that these guns will be used in homicides, it will be used to by gang members, they'll be used in crimes. The NRA and its lobby has advocated for these crazy laws like Stand Your Ground that has led to, the Trayvon Martin case. It's absolutely criminal that we have this lobby that's absolutely creating chaos in our streets. In the community in which I represent, gun violence is destroying that community, it's ending lives, and it halts economic development in that community.
Even after the Trayvon Martin shooting that has had such an effect on the country's politics and the way people are talking about gun rights in this country, even after things like the Gabrielle Gifford shooting in Arizona, even after the mass shootings we've had at places like Virginia Tech, one of the things that you and I have discussed is that the real-world consequences of our gun policies in terms of gun violence, gun massacres that happen, never seem to factor into the discussions that we have about gun policy. I don't know if I expect those discussions to happen at the NRA, since they are advocates on one side of this issue. But do you feel like those debates are happening anywhere? Are we having a serious talk about guns that's not just cheerleading anywhere?
Well, it's very difficult to have the conversation when the NRA funds the campaigns of legislature and of politicians. In the state that I represent, the NRA literally controls, the state legislature. It controls the governor. These kind of conversations cannot be had. They absolutely want no responsible gun ownership or use laws, no lost and stolen handgun reporting, no responsible. They want assault rifles. There's no reason for someone in an urban community to be walking down the street with an AK-47 or to have an assault rifle in their closet. Yet the NRA advocates for these sort of crazy, uncontrollable access to guns, which causes death and destruction in our neighborhoods.
Briefly, sir, do you think that the NRA chooses cities with high rates of gun violence for their convention on purpose? That it's meant to be some sort of sign of hubris or something?
I don't know. I don't think they care. But as I said before, they shouldn't be the NRA convention. It should be a death convention, and it should be attended by morticians, funeral directors, and people who preside over funerals, because their policies, their practices, and their conventions in real life celebrates the death of young people on our streets and in our community.
Pittsburgh City Councilman Ricky Burgess, who was kind enough to host me in Pittsburgh. We were there for the NRA convention last year. Sir, it's nice to see you again. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, still ahead.